As the list of presidential aspirants in the ruling All Progressives Congress grows, the battle for who emerges victorious and flies the party's flag in the 2023 general elections is on. Well, Adams Oshiomhole says he will run a labor-friendly government where economic policies will be workers-centered. He particularly vowed to ensure a stable academic calendar of federal government universities by nipping in the bud the incessant industrial action by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, otherwise known as ASU. Well, this happens to be one of the country's biggest issues, as the union has extended its industrial action by 12 weeks. Can the former Labour leader, former Edo State Governor, and former APC National Chairman get the much-needed support to clinch the party's ticket? We will be speaking with the man himself on his aspirations for Nigeria if he becomes the country's president. I am Adesua Omoruan, and this is the Rise Interview. Thank you for joining us. I'm Adesua. I'm sitting in for Somna Sambu. Now, the former governor of Edo State and past national chairman of the ruling All Progressives Congress, Adams Oshiomhole, has declared to contest the 2023 presidency. At his declaration speech in Abuja, Oshiomhole, who is also a former president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, said he is contesting the 2023 presidential election to reposition the country and provide relief for millions of Nigerians. He adds that Nigeria's economy remains an issue, despite the effort of the APC administration. Oshiomhole said the issue of poverty, insecurity, and unemployment are interrelated, saying one does not have to be a professor to know poverty, unemployment breeds insecurity. He also explains why he had earlier shown interest to contest for the Senate, only to jump into the presidential race.
I have come here this afternoon for one purpose: to formally declare that I, Adams Ali Oshiomhole, hereby declare with confidence my desire to contest for the office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on the platform of a party that we co-found, the All Progressives Congress.
It is true that my people have called on me to contest for Senate, and I accepted. That is true. That is part of history. People have even bought the form for me. That is true. I mean, there is no denying it. I mean, we are accountable. Now, the Senate is limited to 1/3 of my of Edo State that I governed before. So, the fact that I aspire, my people call on me to go to Senate does not mean they are opposed to me being president, right? But I also understand I cannot occupy the two at the same time. Now, so that is simple. I have not withdrawn my application for Senate. I haven't, and I'm not going to until this other one. I mean, it is not about, life is not about all or nothing. In my life, I found that nobody gets everything that you want. You get everything that you are able to negotiate, that people are willing to concede.
Well, I'm joined in the studio now by the man himself, former governor of Edo State and former national chairman of the ruling All Progressives Congress, presidential hopeful Adams Oshiomhole. Thank you so much for joining us on the Arise interview.
Thank you for having me.
So, it's no longer news that you want to become Nigeria's next president. You've declared. But before we go into your aspirations, I'd like to ask you, because you were very instrumental in the re-election of this administration as the then chairman of the party. You preached the gospel of next level across the country. Nigerians bought into it and they re-elected this government. How would you assess it 3 years after? I mean, this is the 7th year in all, but since that campaign, vigorous campaign across the country by you under your leadership as the national chairman, how would you assess this administration so far?
Well, I believe thank you for the question. I believe the president has done his best and the government has done its best. We live in an ever-changing world. As the government tries to deal with the challenges as they existed then, new challenges have emerged. And this, there's nothing surprising about that. Number two, I think there are areas that you can't dispute that the president or rather the federal government under President Buhari has made some progress, significant progress. It's a couple of things that people thought were more of wishful thinking. It bears repeating that the fact that we can talk about the second Niger bridge being almost 90 or 95% completed is a huge statement, because I was a governor when the other party, the PDP, 2-3 times they went to Onitsha to do groundbreaking ceremony. And in one of my speeches during the campaign, I said, the rate at which they are doing groundbreaking ceremony, they might even break the old bridge. So it was something they do when election is approaching. And this president, in spite of the fact that he got very small vote from that part of the country, but committed to, as I said, build bridges of unity. If there is one bridge you can call Bridge of Unity, I think it's the second Niger bridge, linking the eastern part, and it's not limited to the southeast, the entire eastern part, to the rest of the country. I think that is a significant one. There are several other things. I also think that regardless of what anybody wants to say, the fact that you have a president who recognizes that the poorest among us should have a sense of belonging, or that this social investment program where some people get 5,000, 10,000, whatever it is. It's arguable whether the money in the long run or even in the short run can make much difference. But the truth is, I've seen people jumping up and dancing and thanking when you are privileged to give them 2,000, 3,000, or even 5,000 naira in the rural places, and even here in Abuja, and I guess all over the country. So the thought that government ought to work for everyone is evident by that policy. Now you have to look at the tensions, and there's always some time, no matter what you do, some gap between the tensions and what ultimately prevail.
Reality.
And the reality. And of course you look at also the time lag between when you formulate and when you are able to translate it to action. Again, even with the Boko Haram, I believe that substantial progress has been made. We know we had to postpone election in 2014 or 2015 because as of that time, the then President Jonathan told us at the National Council of State meeting that 28 local governments were under the control of Boko Haram, and election cannot take place in those places. And so on account of insecurity, national elections was postponed. That tells you how serious the situation was.
Are you saying it's any better now? The security situation is better?
Yes, I believe. I mean, I listened to a man, I admire him very much because he's bold, he's courageous, and he speaks truth to power, even though he himself is in power. But there are levels of power. The governor of Borno State, he acknowledged that a lot of progress has been made. However, there are new forms of criminality that has developed. Banditry, we now officially have what we call terrorists, and so on and so forth. But that is not due to lack of effort. But as the world changes, new forms of crimes emerges, and you need new tools to deal with those crimes.
Okay. Your Excellency, today, airline operators in Nigeria bowed to pleas from various quarters, including the government, to shelve plans to suspend operations due to unbearable business conditions. Those are their words. Still today, ASO extended their strike by 3 months after an initial 2 months. And today, Your Excellency, you hear citizens say openly that they wish life could return to the days pre-change and pre-next level of the APC administration. What do you have to say to that?
Now, these are 3 questions. I think we should deal with them one by one.
Great. So let's start with the unbearable business conditions.
Well, I'm not familiar with the elements that constitute unbearable business conditions with regard to the airlines. I don't know what those issues are. And I do not represent employers, and it has never been my lot to represent employers. I represent employees. I understand. If you ask me what are the challenges of a worker going to work, working 8 hours or more and struggling to come back home, I can speak authoritatively on those. The Aviation sector is a very unique sector. I do not have the details. But I thought that as employers and as corporate citizens, they should be able to engage. All I can say as a traveler is that sometimes when the airports are crowded and my flight is delayed for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3, 4 hours, and nobody even seeks to explain to me why my flight is being delayed, and I cannot, I can't make my, if I'm to have a meeting in Lagos at 10 a.m. tomorrow, rather than take the first flight from Abuja, I'd rather go the night before, because we are never sure that these airlines, they just don't have respect for time. So if we were to talk to the Nigeria public, if we have choice, we would have gone on strike against Nigeria Airlines, because I have a right to plan my daily schedule. So I'm not familiar with those. Now for ASU, like I mentioned in my declaration, I said, coincidentally, I was drafted by the late President Musa Yar'Adua, who was president then, when ASU were back on a rather prolonged strike. And he asked me to intervene and mediate between government and ASU. And I was quite happy to accept that, because I don't think ASU itself will want to celebrate the fact that he spent more time out of classroom than he does in the classroom. And there is no question, as a father, my kids have been trapped in ABU and some other universities in Nigeria, and it can be quite irritating to see your kids at home. They can't go to work because they are students, and you could see frustrations in their eyes. And every parent who has a child stranded at home can't be a happy parent. So ASUS and beyond, take it away from level of sentiments and feelings of parents and families. It's for me the unbearable cost to the country, because we now live in a world that everybody describes as knowledge-driven. We live now in a smart world, and you can't afford to stop learning and teaching. And so when you have a situation where all government-owned universities are shut down and only private universities are working, and therefore only children whose parents can afford private universities are in school, for me, that is not sustainable. And if at that age, children begin to experience inequality and discrimination on account of the economic circumstances of their parents, they are at home and they have friends whose parents are well off and they are in school, that speaks volumes about what goes, those kind of sentiment, the sentiment that inform my own suggestion that when I see people talking about rotation, justice, fairness in terms of who gets what, I'm like, the real injustice that I see is to be a child at 21 and I choose to go to University of Ibadan. I have the qualification, I was admitted. Another guy had money, he went to Afe Babalola University. We graduated the same day. We finished our secondary school, we resumed the same time. And 4 years later, this one is going for NYC, and me, I'm battling with my 200 or 300 level. That is the kind of injustice that troubles me. What is his fault? His father is poor. He could only afford University of Ibadan, a very good university, maybe compared to Ivo Afe Babalola in terms of
curriculum.
University of Ibadan has a reputation. But that is it. And this is happening everywhere. So for me, and when I was NSC president, I remember engaging the then president Obasanjo. I said, then these school teachers were on strike. And I said, sir, how do you feel as a product of public school in your time that as we speak under your presidency, the only children that are being taught in primary schools and secondary schools are children of the rich? And the worst is that people who come from your kind of village, where there are no private schools, because even in Nigeria today, if you manage to have a big man in a village, there are no private schools in villages, so he will be stranded. And so we can have a society in which, for 9 months, only primary school children of rich people who can afford 1 million, I hear now sometimes 2 million, 500 are in school. So for me, it's absolutely unacceptable. Nothing justifies it.
What did the former president say to you then?
Government can't justify who?
What did former President Obasanjo say to you when you asked him this
question?
Well,
Obasanjo told me where he was doing his best. And I said, your best have to be good enough to get everybody back to school. My only complaint to ASU and to NUT then is that they shouldn't limit their organization of union membership. Shouldn't be limited to government-owned schools alone.
Okay.
It should be extended to private-owned schools. So if it's crisis in education, because it bothers me, I mean, when last did you read any editorial, any meaningful discussion on television about the fact that our schools are short? That ought to trouble everybody. But I guess the reason it doesn't command headline now is not only because people are seemingly getting used to something that is terrible, but that everybody has found what I call a privatized solution by sending their children to private schools, private universities, some of which are just, they are mushroom, they do not have what it takes to produce a graduate.
Unfortunately, not everybody can go the way of this privatized solution, as you have clearly said. Some Nigerians still cannot afford it. So things haven't really changed, going by your narrative, since then and now. We still have the schools shut down, and only the rich can afford an education. So it has far-reaching effects on education. As a former labor union leader, you understand what's going on. Before I ask you what would be the solution, why do you think this keeps recurring? Is it a lack of commitment on the part of governments, or the quality of negotiations by labor union? Is it that they're not able to negotiate at a one fell swoop, or government doesn't really care? What would you say is the real challenge here, why we keep seeing this industrial action every year? Every administration faces it.
It's been there for more than 20 years.
Yeah.
I remember during Abacha, General Abacha, for 2 years universities were shut. So, but time does not cure what is wrong. It may not be acceptable that we shut down institutions of learning. Now, I spoke on this when on my declaration. I said, when I engaged a vice chancellor recently, I said, what is the problem again? And he said, that agreement, that is, he gave me a typical example. He was a vice chancellor, and in the compensation, vice chancellor's pay is about 1.4 million. But once his tenure was over, he has to now decide to return back to teach as a professor in the same university. His salary will drop to 450. And having adjusted his lifestyle for 5 years to 1.4 million, how does he now survive on 450? And this 450,000 naira a month was part of the element that were negotiated when I mediated 12 years ago. It is only in Nigeria that a man can be on one salary for 3 years. In every other part of the world, including developing countries, when your inflation officially goes to double digit, even single digit, you find ways and means of adjusting the compensation of workers, because we're in a labor market. If the price of every other product in that market is going up, and then the price of labor is frozen, the worker is subject to double squeeze of rising prices and declining income. And the Nigerian condition is worsened by the fact that we are not just dealing with the evil of hyperinflation, we are also dealing with endless devaluation of the naira, which unfortunately, among people who are contesting now, I've heard some of them say they even want the naira to be floated. They are fighting CBN governor. Why are you not doing further devaluation? Don't protect the naira. Let it find its level. Naira does not know its level, because the forces that determine those levels are completely invisible and, in my view, completely out of control of government. So, but solution, yes, government is not about lamentation. Government is to fix solution. If the world was perfect, maybe we'll be on autopilot. So we'll let people seek office because they believe they can address the problem that confronts society, or even if there are no manifest problems, that they believe they can further improve on the quality of life of the people. I mean, when I was growing as a younger union leader, one of the things that were clear to me when we talk about regulation, and some people talk about complete deregulation, government has no business in business. I said business need government, because when those who are motivated by profit, that profit motive of private enterprise never coincide with the social purpose of government, and therefore through government regulation you ensure that you reconcile the greed of those who live on profit with the social needs of those who are not so privileged. And so you need the state. And we have also seen that when economies goes into recession, there was worldwide economy in the days of Obama. It wasn't big companies like General Motors, General Electric, all those big world multinationals had to fall back on the state for bailout. And the state taxpayers' money were used to bail them out, even though different countries applied the rule differently, and in some cases they were expected to pay back after some time. So I spoke to this ASU issue because I do not understand how all those who have declared sympathy of making Nigeria greater, how can any country be greater than what it knows? And they always talk about, imagine we are 200 million people. See, you are speaking to quantity, but in a smart world you should speak to quality. How smart is the 200 million people? And that smartness is a function of education.
So what would you do?
So I, even though I am a loyal member of APC, I do not accept that we can afford to allow the university to remain short.
Okay, so in that instance, you have praised the administration so far with security and with some other things, but when it comes to education, you're scoring them low.
No, be careful with the words you choose.
Oh, so what is it?
I appreciate, because I mean, I'm not suggesting that the country is fully secure now. Even the president will say so. Even today I read in a newspaper where the president ordered the army to redouble their effort to fight kidnappers or bandits or terrorists or whatever.
Yes.
So we still do have serious security problem. There's no wishing it away or pretending over it. In any case, I'll be fooling myself if I claim that the problem has disappeared. It hasn't. It has even got it complicated in some respect, but not because the president is not doing his best. As I said, we are solving one form of criminality and another form is evolving, and I believe politicians too are also contributing. When I see people threatening, if this doesn't happen, we are going to do this. You're preparing the young ones for war. Why do you want to do that? Even people who are every day or a couple of times described as statesmen, you can't be a statesman when you are threatening war and when you are saying, if I don't win the election, this will happen. I think that, you know, we are in a very tense situation. And unfortunately, as we approach the election, I expect from experience that we might even witness a renewed level of violence arising from recklessness on the part of a segment of the political class.
Your Excellency, before we go on a break, I'd like you to speak finally to this ASU issue. Should you become the president, what would you do differently?
First, I will invite ASU to discuss first the issue of compensation, even if they do not demand it. Because I do not believe that a professor should live on 450,000 naira. The danger of that is that only those who have no alternative will resort to teaching. We ought to attract the best brains into the teaching profession. That is what it used to be. If a young guy is clever, is smart, so, oh, this one is going to be a professor, he's going to go and teach. But today, it's only if you can't get a job in the oil sector or banking sector or customs and some other sectors that, okay, what can I do? Let me teach. I think that we need to get the best brain back. And the way to do it is to pay attractive wage. I have always argued that wages, which some people look at only in terms of costs, for the employee it is income. And it is the level of income that defines the purchasing power. And if an economy is in recession like we'll be battling, one of the ways to pull out is to empower people to spend. You can't spend what you have not earned. So we will increase the pay of ASU. By how much? We will discuss that. And I will reconcile that with, I mean, the Minister of Finance should be to put out the balance sheet. What do we earn? What do we borrow? What are our priorities? In fairness, I have had the privilege of being a governor. Yeah. Hard as I tried to fix all the problems, I knew that I would be able to fix all of them. I have to then decide to reorder my priorities. And incidentally, one of my priorities was that nothing may justify a situation where children are in a classroom without roof, and when it is raining, they are finding where to hide, and even the road to the school is flooded, and parents are trapped. And by the time I left Edo, ask anybody, however unkind the person might want to be, he will tell you that I made a difference in restoring integrity to primary schools, to secondary schools, and even replacing children who were sitting on floor or broken bricks. I provided modern furnitures. And if that program had continued, my hope was that one day every school will wear that red roof and the children will be happy and comfortable to go to school. My thesis was simple. If you are going to encourage universal basic, compulsory universal basic education, let the school have some appeal to the child. But I also can tell you that by the time I left Edo, out of school population in Edo was about 7%, between 6 and 7%. Whereas in some part of the country, it is as high as 55%.
In double digits.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
so the other thing is the condition of our universities. The teaching, I mean, you visit the universities, you will walk into a hall. My daughter experienced a situation where she told me she has to go to classroom as early as 7 a.m. to be able to sit on the front bench because at the back, there's even no microphone, so people are struggling to hear what the lecturer is saying.
Indeed.
And you have hostels in which the toilets are not working, 10, 12, 15 children locked into a cell called hostel. I mean, there are so many things that can be done. My view is we can't have all the resources that we need, but we have to sit down and say, of all the problems that we face, where do we start? My argument would be, start by investing in education. Because once the child is educated, and somebody asks him, if you die, you will go to heaven in the name of religion, the child will be able to interrogate and process, those kind of, doctrinaire. But if he's not educated and he's just there, of course, whatever you put, the child just listening.
Okay, we have to go for a quick break, Your Excellency. But one thing I wanted you to speak on as well with this strike is the payment system, which is also controversial. The IPs or the UTAS. I don't know if you're aware of that point by ASU to say we have our own payment system. The government says it has its own payment system. Which do we go for? And that's also controversial. But let's go on this quick break. Perhaps you'll speak to us when we come back. You're watching the live interview. When we return, the conversation continues. Stay with us. It's glad to have you back on the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Adeso Moran. Well, my guest is still presidential aspirant of the ruling All Progressives Congress, Adams Oshiomole. Thank you so much for staying with us, Your Excellency. So we've spoken at length on the industrial action in the education sector and what you would do differently. But a point of controversy at the moment is the payment platform for the teachers in the universities in Nigeria. They are calling for a different system, which is known as the UTAS, while the government has in existence what is called the IPs. Is that something you're also willing to let go, to say university lecturers can have their way on the kind of payment platform they choose to have?
I don't think so.
Okay.
The employer has the responsibility to ensure that everybody it employs and work get paid. It is not for the employee to decide for the employer how to be paid, but your payment has to be correct. So I don't understand why that should be a problem. I think the real problem that bothers me is the conditions in the universities. I mean, somebody just forwarded something to me. I don't know why he said it to me. You know, some pictorial to see the condition under which our children are being taught.
Yeah.
Those are the things that I think we should fight over. And that is a viable fight. But whether you should pay me through this particular system or that system. And I think an issue here is that some people argue, at least from point of view of government, that there are certain leakages arising from the model that some other persons are proposing.
Yes.
But my general argument is, how I get to work is my burden. How you pay me is your burden. So government has a right to formulate whatever method it thinks is appropriate to eliminate leakages, abuses, and corruption in the payment system. You know, this is the only country you hear of ghost workers, ghost teachers, and so on. So if government thinks this is the way to eliminate it, why not? I think what ASUCA insists on is that however you want to do it, at the end of 30 days, I must have my check and it must be complete. I don't think it's something we want to fight over. I remember when I was a governor in Edo State, the Edo Wing or South-South chairman came and said, we're trying to do biometrics and to cover all the sectors. And he said, this is not something they are interested in. And I said, you can't say so. I said, look, you can't afford to say that. Because in the universities, you have computer science as a field of study. We can't keep on with the old method. So I thought you will encourage me and offer these services free. And I see that this is not something I want to negotiate. Anybody who says not ready to subject himself to biometric check has a story to tell. And I do not really think that that is something else we should fight over. But that the conditions in Nigeria universities are awful, are terrible, yes.
Okay.
And that they don't need to be so, yes. That Nigeria can afford better universities, yes, I believe so.
Okay, great.
But something has to give.
Something has to give.
Yes.
It is all.
If you see it as a priority,
yes,
we'll find the money. Like that day I said, you know, I hear figures about 1-2 trillion for fuel subsidy. What is ASO asking for? Is it up to that?
No, it's not up to.
There must be a couple of things we can play around with, and we'll find the money to do what we believe in. But we will never find the money to do what we do not believe in. I mean, I do not know of any. The elementary principle of economics is that resources are scarce in relation to our wants. And the act of governance is a bias act. When I say bias, it's value driven. Okay. So you choose where you want to put the money. And that's at the heart of contestation elsewhere. You know, you will hear typically a Biden saying, we're going to increase the taxes of all those earning more than $400,000 a year.
The rich.
The range, yeah. And I'm going to put that money into education. We need to invest in science, and so on and so forth. Okay.
Very quickly, Your Excellency, because time is far running fast. You speak about subsidy. That's a good point. What would you do differently? Because you said that you cannot do the same things over and over again, expect different results. The issue of subsidy, the issue of security, the issue of the economy in general, what is the how for you? How are you going to do anything different?
You know, that's why the day I declared, I talk about having a conversation between the monetary authorities the fiscal authorities, the Ministry of Finance, CBN, Ministry of Industry, Investment, etc., so that we have policy coherence. You can't have one government. This one is pursuing policies that seems to contradict the policies that other ones are applying. Our trade policy must be factored in. Now, the problem of subsidy, that's why I said, if we continue with these so-called market forces without strict regulation, there will be no end to it. Because by November 2008, when I assumed office, a naira was about 116 or 160 naira to the dollar. And now it is about 600 or about 500 officially.
Yes.
So if you have held that variable constant, if the naira was constant, floating between a band of 3%, and your exchange rate was still between 150, 160, at 175 naira to the dollar, to a liter, you won't be speaking of subsidies. You will not be speaking of subsidies. But even if you were to wipe off, quote, the 3 trillion based on today's exchange rate, and you will see some dollar value for as a basis for costing, there will be no end to subsidy. And that's why I argue that we have to do something with regards to our monetary to stabilize the naira.
Okay.
If you don't stabilize the naira, there's no end to it.
Security.
And if you stabilize the naira, you will find that because the challenge people are facing now, that your pay is not going up, right? But your
cost of living
your
is.
Basic cost of survival, are going up every day.
Indeed.
You have to be a magician to survive in that kind of environment. So subsidy is now, it's not the kind of subsidy that I was talking about or I fought against under Obasanjo. When the number was about 20 billion, 40 billion, I will say to President Obasanjo, if of a budget the size of 1 trillion, 40 billion will stop you from delivering the greatest good to the greatest number. But now it is running to
4 trillion.
I mean, I can't understand the game anymore.
A lot of us can, but
and that is why I said, going forward, this economy require tough, imaginative, and less of right-wing economists to be at the center of policy making. Because these guys who believe, and I call them slaves of market forces, they will tell you, because we are not producing. That is why because we are not producing, they don't consume more than you produce.
Okay, very quickly. I need it to be as brief as possible because I have a lot of questions. Since we're talking about the economy and forex and subsidy, beg your pardon, the controversial issue in Nigeria today is the issue of the central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele, attempting to contest for the presidency on that platform, as you as well, the APC. Do you think he should resign, or should he contest at all to be the president of Nigeria?
My challenge always when dealing with public policy is that you don't apply a principle selectively. Now, if any minister is in office and he has declared, that minister was appointed by the same president, exactly the same way as Governor Emefiele was appointed. So if other ministers are declaring, and quite a number have declared, and nobody is calling on them to resign, what is special about Emefiele? What is special about it? Okay.
Let's agree, without conceding, that you performed excellently well as the governor of Edo State. Do you think that is enough to earn you the presidential ticket of the APC and, in the long run, the president of Nigeria come 2023? Why do you want to become president, basically?
Well, first, thank you for your kind comment about my stewardship in Edo. But the truth is, I didn't start life as a governor. The most important job I think I've handled is the presidency of Nigeria Labour Congress. That brought me face to face with power. I had to interrogate power. I have to challenge existing policies with alternative policies. It's not just the era of I no go agree. It's we don't accept this, but this will be better. And we advance our reasons and persuade Nigerians to decide. There was no magic when Nigerians decided to listen to NSE decision under my leadership, when we asked them to stay at home, and they disobeyed President Obasanjo, who asked them to go to work. And eminent lawyers like Ganifa Himi and quite a number of others said, Oshiomhole is the people's president. Even Rube Abati, he wrote, front page, man of the year, Oshiomhole is the people's president. Try and get a copy, it will tell you something. So I'm familiar with the Nigeria condition. I understand what it means not to have food before going to bed. And when I talk about how parents feel when their children are at home, it's because I have kids who were in ABU. I have my first son who has to spend I don't know how many years reading medicine, for almost 9-10 years, because of these endless strikes. So, if you do not understand the problem, you can't solve it. And my experience in the day has taught me one thing, that, which I spoke to earlier, that it is what you believe in that you find money to do. I will give you one typical example. All the roads in Edo were bad, virtually. And I decided I am going to use the instrument of state to deliver the greatest good to the greatest number. And so, the first area I choose to start the process of urban renewal was an area called Coste Sinuro area. It was a dump site, and the people there have had to relocate. And I was told by officials of Ministry of Environment that they are using dump to control erosion. Yeah. Anyway, basically just to say that I put resources in those areas that will affect poor people, where more and more will apply the road, where you find 20 people living in one building. I did not construct any dual carriageway in what they call GRA, or Government Reservation Area, including the road leading to Government House. So I understand that given the problems we face in Nigeria today, we just need to make sensible reordering of our priorities. Agree that we don't have the money to do all of the things, but which one must come before the other? Yeah. And we must also appreciate that we can't decree sustainable growth. It has to be an outcome of sensible policies. For example, if you don't fix power, if you don't fix power,
very briefly,
if you don't fix power, even teaching would be a challenge. So and I don't accept that we cannot fix power.
So it's a domino effect. You fix one thing and it fixes others. That's what you're saying?
No.
Very briefly.
What I'm saying is you identify the key drivers.
Yes.
That without which the economy can't grow.
And what are they? Very briefly.
You need to deal with power. You need to revoke the privatization that was done, in which public asset was given to people who have neither the know-how nor the financial wherewithal, and then start all over.
Okay.
Revoke the privatization as it is currently structured, and get power on. If you get power on, that by itself will reduce the cost of doing business. As we speak now, even people doing mama put are experiencing difficulties to put on a bulb because they have to buy a liter of diesel.
Okay.
And so on and so forth.
My producer is gracious. He's extended it by 4 minutes. So we have 4 minutes to wrap up, Your Excellency. Security, you really didn't answer my question on how you're going to fix security, which is a major challenge for Nigeria at the moment. Should you become president?
My starting point is to get industries working. I spoke to that at some length, that you cannot create 1 million jobs, 100 million jobs through token symbolic gestures. You have to bring the industries back. We have to bring the textile industry back, the tire industry, the chemical industry, the automobile industry. If all of those are produced in Nigeria, tens of millions or hundreds of millions tens of millions of people will find not just jobs, but good paying jobs. If they are working, those who will be tempted to go to crime will be less. Crime is a consequence of much more deeper root. So whereas we will deal with those, of course we will equip the army, the police, and the police need to go through complete reorientation, and of course strengthen the intelligence services, etc., etc. in an interview of this nature, you can't give out all the questions. I am not going to become a security expert overnight. What I need is the courage to identify competent men and women in uniform to provide leadership of the armed forces and make not just budgetary allocation to the army, but ensure that the procurement process is such that the country is getting value for money, and that there is appropriate remuneration and occasional adjustment of salaries to keep pace with the rate of inflation, and that the men and women you deploy to go and to go and fight, including the possibility of being killed in defense of our country, that when that happens, that their families are properly provided for, so that when the soldier takes his rifle to go after the enemy, he understood that the country is a secure country. If something happened to him, his family will not. There are a couple of things we can do differently. When I was in Edo, even though the armed forces is not under my, they are federal controlled, but I did make provision to support army officers, military officers who were killed, whose wives were resident in Edo State. Because we need to show that we care, we need to show that we appreciate our armed forces. If you watch when each time President Biden speaks, I found it interesting. He will always say, God protect our armed forces. Yeah. God protect our armed forces. If I'm a soldier and I see President in every speech, not parade day, not anything that has to do with a military institution, but just delivering a normal speech. Yeah. The way Adia will say, God bless you all, he will say, God protect our armed forces.
You seem to be a fan of the American politics and the American president.
Well, I appreciate the way they debate issues. My frustration with the Nigeria system is that everybody talk of fairness, it tells of where you come from. I have argued, and you go and do your research. There is poverty in Katsina today, and there is poverty in Sokoto, and there is poverty in Abeokuta, where former president come from. I'm trying to remember wherever they have come from. So
Bayelsa, the road to Bayelsa was impossible. I'm too, a very important personality died on that road 6 years after Jonathan was president. So what will make a change for me is not that all of us can be president or that my tribesman can be president, but I will have a president that will put the right policies in place and give me power. Power, I mean energy, so that people can plan their life and run their businesses and have a banking system. I'm particularly concerned about our monetary policies. I don't accept that I save at 5% and I borrow at 20%. Those must change, because as a young man, not knowing anybody, I walked to Barclays Bank. I borrowed 75,000 naira. The only collateral I had was a title document, certificate of occupancy, and I have a house in Kaduna, which we see as our family house. So this have happened before. We just need to focus more on policies, because this what we are doing now is heightening tension in the country. All right. We wish you the best, but before you can achieve all of this, you have to pick a ticket of a platform first. In your party, it's very crowded. We can only wish you the best. We're out of time, Your Excellency Adams Oshiomhole, former governor of Edo State, former national chairman of the ruling All Progressives Congress, and former Labour leader in the country.
Former president of NSC.
Former president of NSC. Thank you. Well, that's it for this edition of the Rise interview. Do join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye, and thank you for